So, hi everyone! Before we start, I would like to address the band-aid on my finger. I caught my cuticle on something and it like ripped and I almost cried. It hurt so bad, and now Cinderella's helping me fix things up, so thank you, bae. I recently read and finished Blind by Dewoskin. This book I gave 3 out of 5 stars, but I'm kind of leaning toward 3.5 stars. This book follows a girl named Emma who was blinded in an accident. This book obviously just follows her life, and it's about how a girl in her town recently commits suicide, and she really just wants to figure out why, even though she didn't really know this girl, and this is all happening while she's dealing with her life and getting used to being blind after having sight for 13 or 14 years. I'm going to start out with the cons so that we can end on a good note, because I really did enjoy this book. It just had a lot of its bad qualities kind of bring it down. So let's just get to those first. If you saw the book haul that I hauled this book in, I was so excited. I could not wait to read it, and very quickly I was discouraged to read it. This book took me like a month to read because it gets so boring. Like, it's mostly the first half, I will admit that, because there are a series of like flashback type incidents that occur where it's like chapters at a time of just like explanations of what happened when she first went to the hospital after getting blind, and all this different stuff about being rehabilitated into normal life, and she just kept on flashing back to that at the beginning of this book. This definitely slowed down the pace of the book, and it got confusing too, because I would put down the book because I was so bored with these flashbacks, and then I would come back to it like a week later and be like, am I reading a flashback or is this the actual story? I've said the word flashback like 50 times, so let's move on. The second thing I didn't really enjoy was that like I said, this suicide happens in her town of a girl she doesn't really know. She says blatantly they never really spoke, and so she's getting together this huge group of friends, like, let's find out what happened, and one of the characters who was the girl's best friend is like, it's none of your business, and that's exactly how I felt the entire time. I felt like she really had no reason to be looking into that. It was a really private affair, and it just, I never really made sense of why do you care so much about this girl that you never talked to, and it just felt like none of her business. So because I felt this way, it kind of led me to be like, not really believe in the story, because I was just so exasperated with it. I just felt like the story was so useless because you didn't need that plot device in there, because it's already about a really cool theme of a girl being blind. I didn't understand why they'd have to throw in that murder mystery aspect. Which was my next point. The major problem I had with this book is that it was trying to be 2 books at once, and I really wish it would have just been one or the other. We had this whole side of the story where it was this girl battling with blindness, trying to get through it. The other half of the story was what happened to this girl, and why was she feeling like she had to kill herself, and all this different stuff. And I really wish the plot had just stuck to a character development story about Emma, about her struggles and what she went through. It made no sense to me, and even after finishing it, I just feel like it was totally unnecessary to have that entire second conflict of why did this girl kill herself. I really just wish this was Emma's story and no one else's, because it was really cool. So the next thing that I was really annoyed with was that I've been talking about this whole video that I felt the conflict of the suicide was unnecessary, and most of the reason I felt that way is because in the end nothing really got resolved anyway. Like, I didn't care about it at the time, and even afterward I was like, what was the point of that whole thing if nothing changed and you didn't find out anything? For half the book pretty much to be either a flashback or part of this whole suicide mystery thing, it just dragged. Also toward the end there's this really random romance crap just thrown in there. It was literally the whole book she's talking about how she liked this one guy. At the end, she just, like, goes for all of them. And it's like, what? I felt like it could have been best if it had just been one person, or ideally, if it wasn't just one person, then she would have been mature enough to be like, I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I was just really confused on why suddenly, like, everyone was like, you want to go out with me, like, in the last 10 pages. That was all that I found annoying about the book. So as you can see, the main issue I had with the book was just the plot, and so everything else was great, so I'll talk about that next. This book, first of all, is one of the most thought-provoking books I've read in a long time, and though it's not necessarily, like, philosophical, and it doesn't really, like, talk about, like, controversial things, it was more of, I've never read anything like this in my life before, so it would be describing things about her being blind and just things that I've never thought about before, like in your daily life that you could not do if you were blind. She mentioned at some point she had to retrain herself to eat with the fork, and I never had thought about it that way, where it's like, I'm just thinking I couldn't be able to use a fork if I had my eyes closed. So it was just, I was on a whole new level of empathy with this character, and I could understand where all her anger was coming from when she's angry in the book. So that was just, I love books that do that to me. Like I briefly mentioned earlier, I said that I love this book because it's just so completely unique from anything you will ever read. And that's definitely true because it's a book that has no physical descriptions of anything. And of course, like I said, in the flashbacks it does have stuff like that. But for the majority of the actual live plot happening, it's always, I hear this, I smell this. One of the really cool writing things that she does is she says it smells like a color. So if she's talking about sunlight, she'll be like, it smells like orange. That was just, I love that. And I love how it was described. It was never confusing. So that is the book Blind. I am definitely going to be keeping this book for a very long time. I will definitely be recommending it to people because it's so different and I love that about it. So if you thought this book sounded really cool, I would suggest maybe checking it out from a library. Thank you so much for Penguin for letting me review this. I will see you next time with another review or another video. Goodbye, everybody!